All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. John's still out in Montana. They're killing stuff out there left and right, so can't wait to get that back. But in the meantime, it's just me. You've got just me, and I've got free reign to talk to who, whatever I want. So I got my good buddy Parker McDonald here on a Zoom video, so you can check this out on YouTube as well. We're going to have some little bit of deer hunting conversation, straying a little bit back and forth between elk and deer here, just based on timing and circumstances. But how you doing today, Parker?
Man, I'm doing great. I got at least 2 hours of sleep last night, so it was great. It was awesome. I feel refreshed. My little girl, I was telling you earlier, my little girl has just gotten into the habit of coming and sleeping in our bed. Like in the middle of the night, she'll get up and come and sleep in our bed. She's 3, and we were always like, we're not going to be the parents that let our kids sleep with us. It's just not who we are. And then you just really can't do anything about it. But she like kicked me off the bed, and like I felt like I was sleeping on the side of the bed the whole night. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm doing great.
Well, you're getting
absolutely excellent.
Ready for the deer season. I mean, if you've been following along or you're familiar with Parker and the Southern Ground podcast, his YouTube channel, I mean, he actually took his pants off on his YouTube video, one of the last ones, and got maybe 4 hours of sleep. So it's all old hat at this point, right?
Yep. Yeah. You gotta be okay with it. I'm okay with not getting a whole lot of sleep, especially like I'll train myself about 2 months out of deer season. I'll train myself and I'll get up early every morning just so I can get back in the habit of it. Because once deer season rolls in, dude, I mean, it's past turkey season before I get back into the habit of actually sleeping a full night. So, I mean, half the year basically, I'm getting up before 3 most of the time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I don't even go to bed till then.
Yeah, it's crazy. We can talk about that, like why, I guess. But yeah, I try to get myself in that habit, and I'm in the habit right now. I get up pretty daggum early. So
Yeah, this is the odd one, at least for me, for us, because normally we're doing I put my daughter to bed and then we have podcasts. I'm usually drinking beer and I got a cup of coffee here in the morning and we're sitting here, just
yeah.
making use of the time. So it's a little bit different time frame. But for people who aren't familiar with you, Parker, and what you've been doing for the last, everybody kind of is on the same track, I guess. So how long have you been doing your podcast and a little bit of your hunting history?
Well, I've been deer hunting my whole life. I've been doing the podcast now for, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years, maybe something like that. Two and a half. And doing the YouTube channel for the same amount of time. And I started out with Dan Johnson on Sportsmans Nation. I'm still on Sportsmans Nation Podcast Network as far as podcasts go, but just recently made the switch to start my own YouTube channel a couple months back, actually. And it was just kind of one of those things for me where I was producing a ton of videos through deer and turkey season and during the off season. I was really hustling, trying to produce a lot. And I was on this channel, which was the Sportsman's Nation channel that it was great. I helped start it, and it was really kind of a collaborative channel with a whole bunch of different creators. But the level of not the level, but the quantity of videos that I was putting out made it look like it was just my channel, right? So I was putting out so many videos, and other people who were doing really what the purpose of that channel is for is a whole bunch of different people basically collaborating. And I wasn't really doing that nearly as much. I was more or less producing the same amount of videos a guy with a full-time YouTube channel would. And so I decided to take it and just do my own channel for that reason. And so far it's been going great, man. I mean, this is my first deer season with that channel. I'm a little over halfway to where I was whenever I left that channel. So as far as subscribers go, and really the amount of watch time and stuff that I'm getting now that I'm doing my own channel is way more for whatever reason. So that's pretty cool. I enjoy doing it. I've been filming for 3 years. I've actually been doing video. So I'm a worship pastor at a church, and I've been doing that my whole life. I've been in church ministry and church work, and so I've always known how to do video and audio stuff. And I've always loved to hunt, and I've always thought like, man, I know how to do this stuff. Why am I not putting stuff out? Like, why am I not filming my hunts? Why am I not doing? I wanted to start a podcast like freaking 7 years ago, 8 years ago. I was like, man, I know I have all the knowledge to do this. Why don't I do it? And I just never did it. And finally, I decided to chew it off, and I mean, it's great, dude. I love it. I love the whole filming aspect. I love the podcasting. I get to have cool conversations with guys like you, and then like I get to have cool conversations with guys out here who are just like straight up deer murderers, dude. They're insane. Just good old boy country guys who have been killing deer for their whole life, but before that, I grew up in West Texas and grew up hunting that kind of Texas scene. If people know what that is, it's like leases, mesquite bushes, flat desert, dry looking stuff, but with a lot of deer, and sitting in big shooting houses with a heater in it, sitting over a corn feeder. Like, that's just how I grew up. That's how you hunt in Texas. Like, unless you're in the eastern part of the state where there's some public, that's pretty much how everybody hunts in Texas. And so grew up doing that, shot a lot of deer, and just really had a passion for it. Then as soon as I graduated, basically I moved down here to Alabama and was on hunting clubs and stuff like that. Didn't really get into the whole public land thing. I did a little bit, not much. Um, and man, something just like lit a fire inside of me for public. And I was just like, it all started with the kayak. It was like, I'd always kayak fished and stuff. And I was like, one day I was just like, man, what if I found some water access public land out here that I could just try to take my kayak in? That would be pretty hardcore. Well, I bought Onyx right then, bought Onyx maps, started looking. I was like, holy cow, I live in like a mecca for water access. Like, I need to be doing this. And so to a lot of people listening to this is probably going to sound stupid, but it was a big deal for me to not get on a hunting club. I was like, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to keep hunting this way. It kind of got to a point, dude, where I was like, I was getting pissed at all my friends and like not happy for them when they would shoot big deer. And I wouldn't. And it's like, I just got this thing where I was like, you know what? I'm going to be happy no matter what. Like, knowing I want to be happy for my friends whenever people kill good deer or whatever, knowing that, well, if I don't kill one, it's because I'm hunting like the hardest way that you can possibly hunt. And hopefully and it did work. I mean, but also in that season, I had the best season of my life, my first season of hunting public land. So using the kayak and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I mean, I'm still doing that same thing, hunting public land. I've added a few more states to where I'm traveling and stuff like that. But for the most part, man, like I love Alabama. I love hunting public land in Alabama where most people don't. Most people hate it and they complain about it a lot. I love it, man. It's just great.
And so with switching over to public, because I feel like it's hard because I feel like somewhat we live in an echo chamber. So we are always talking to public land guys, and we're, you can get so much information from guys that hunt big leases and do food plots and things like that. But it doesn't really matter. I've had a couple opportunities now to hunt on some bigger farms, or people telling me about these properties that I should come hunt with them. And it's like, I feel almost claustrophobic, like, because you can only go to the edge, and then inevitably that's where you find all the best deer signs. Now you're hunting on the edge of your neighbor's property or the edge of public, and people are creeping up on yours because they think that your property is better. So for the guys that are making that transition from private land to public land, and they did. I think the one thing that you lack to some degree, I mean, obviously people are killing deer on public land, and but is the control. I feel like people are relinquishing that control and just stepping out into the unknown, and you might run into 10 guys, you might not run into anybody. So I guess, how did your transition to that public land go, and what do you think for you made you more successful, or have the best year of your life at that point?
Yeah. So the thing that I always noticed with the hunting clubs and things that I was hunting on, a lot of the private land, is hard work did not necessarily equal success. Um, you couldn't, there was only so many miles that you could cover on a club that was maybe 500 acres. You couldn't go to every single terrain feature that looked awesome. You couldn't go to every transition that looked awesome. There was only certain little spots, and if a club has been around for a decent amount of time, then more than likely somebody has figured out those spots. Like, you're not going to be the guy that's there's probably a ladder stand, or maybe even a shooting house, or maybe a spot used to be great at one point, but then they went in and put a food plot there and totally changed the dynamic that one spot had. Like, it wasn't that I could go in and find areas where oh man, I can work hard and hard. Whenever somebody shoots a big deer or whatever, you see people on social media, they comment, hard work pays off. Well, it was not always the case on leases. Now, I could see, on the other hand, where if I owned property, if I had my own property, that I could do whatever I wanted to it, to manage the habitat, things like that. Yes, hard work would definitely could pay off in that. But the thing that I noticed about public land is that the hard work almost always paid off. If I could work harder, I could get into the areas that were not, like, literally were not hunted ever. And I could get into those spots, and I might have to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning or 1:30 in the morning to get there, but I could get there in my kayak. And that was the whole dynamic for me. Was I was using this water access, which is something that people out here just don't do, because they don't really have to. So I'm hunting um, big, gigantic public land pieces, and I'm basically trying to find little small sections of it that are landlocked and waterlocked. So the only access to get to it is by water. I mean, that's hard work to get there. But then also, biting off these like gigantic chunks of public, hard work can still pay off, because you can cover a lot of ground if you're willing to put in the miles and do a lot of off-season scouting. Like, you can find those areas, because if you find those big gigantic pieces, more than likely there's a pocket somewhere in there that has deer, and more than likely there's places in there that have big deer. I'm a believer that if there are deer, that means there's big deer somewhere. If there's deer in an area, there's big deer somewhere around there. You just got to figure them out. I mean, honestly, dude, there are times where I'll run into spots where the majority of the buck activity is happening across the property boundary. But I mean, with public, you really can, you can be flexible with what you're doing. I help my dad try to figure out his little piece that he owns. He owns about 25 acres in East Texas, and we've gone in there, and he's figured out a lot, and I've tried to help him figure out some stuff, just even not being there personally at the time, but the times when I can go, finding different bedding areas. We found a bed that was like literally 10 yards behind his big gigantic shooting house that he had out there. Like, he's like, man, I always jump a deer right here every single time. And so I walked over there and found hair in a bed, and I was like, well, it's because he's figured you out. This deer's figured out where you're at. But there's only so much you can do on 25 acres and still actually get to hunt it. You know what I mean? Like, you can't you can't you can't say, well, I'm just going to stay out of this place until the rut. It's only 25 acres. Like, you're not going to get to hunt for the rest of the season. If you only go in there during the rut, then you what are you going to do? He doesn't have public around that he can go to. So you really are limited whenever you have private. I am so flexible because there's public land within an hour and a half on like every side of me. So if there's, let's say that the wind is bad for this one area that I want to go to, well, I can go to another one. Whereas a guy on a club, he may not have that. He may not have that flexibility to be able to go literally wherever he wants. And so, I guess in a nutshell, that for me, that was what it was. It was like, if I put in enough hard work on public, I can be successful in this deal. And it showed itself to be true. Like, that's exactly what happened. I worked hard, and I had, up to that point, the best season that I ever had. I was tagged out by December. I had my 3 bucks, and 2 of them were pretty small, but I didn't care. Like, at that point, I was like, I'm shooting whatever I see, because this is my first year hunting public. Like, I just want this experience. And so, I think that year I shot like 8 deer or 9 deer or something like that. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun.
So let's talk about I'd imagine when you're hunting these clubs, you're not getting up at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So let's talk about those first couple of sits where you're like, I'm going to get up at 2 and I'm going to go in here. I mean, it kind of sounds crazy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and for me, I'm in a spot like where we're at, where you say like an hour and a half, like I could drive probably 15 minutes in any direction and get to public, and some pretty big tracks of public. So, I mean, when I talked with John Eberhart, he says, well, I drive usually 2 hours up here or 45 minutes this way. And it's like, most of my spots are about a half hour, 45 minutes away. But if I really wanted to spend the time, the problem is that when you get to those spots that are, 15, 20 minutes away, they're 15, 20 minutes away from everybody. So
yeah,
that's where everybody goes.
Yeah.
But to get up at 2 a.m, I mean, I could probably get to my spot in the UP, which is about 7 hours away, and
yeah.
so that seems like, wow.
I did a timed deal last year where I timed myself. I set a timer from the time I woke up to the time I got completely settled in the tree, and it was 4.5 hours. That was the time. So that's waking up, getting dressed, driving the hour or whatever that it took for me to get there, getting the boat in the water, and paddling it. That specific spot was like 2 miles, paddling it 2 miles, and getting out and hiking up a ridge that wasn't really, it didn't take long. I mean, as the crow flies, the tree that I ended up sitting in that day to my boat was probably, maybe 75 yards. I didn't really walk a long ways that specific morning. But I got set up by 5:30, and I got up at 1 o'clock. So, it was a 4.5 hour process just to get everything together. And like, sometimes I'm going in deeper. I'll kayak into a spot and I'll walk further than that. That's the beauty of the kayak, though, is that you're really, you're getting, like, you don't have to walk a long ways. It is so much easier to paddle than it is to hike up a ridge. Like, that's just an easier thing to do. People think it's like the most hardcore thing in the world, but it's really easier. Like, I would rather paddle a deer out 2 miles than drag a deer out 2 miles. Like, that's much easier. The hardest part about it is the time. It's time consuming. It takes longer. You can't just get out of your truck and go. You're getting out of your truck, pulling up at a boat ramp or a mud ramp, or, maybe there's no ramp there at all. It's just a road close to water, and you, put in underneath a bridge or something. But I have found that deters most people. They just don't want to do that when it's cold outside. Because people do it all summer long. People are kayak fishing. people are putting their boats in, at 5 o'clock in the morning, getting their bass boat out there. But for whatever reason, to deer hunt, they'll do it for bass, but they won't do it for deer. And I don't get it, but I'm happy about it. Most of the time, in the places that I hunt, I'm the only person there. Like there's nobody else there. And so like that little bit, like sacrificing some sleep or whatever is totally worth it to me. It's a no-brainer, honestly. Like, and as you do it for, it's kind of like working out, I mean, you work out for a year straight, then working out becomes easier and you can push yourself a little bit harder. And so that's where I'm at right now, is like, I mean, it's just the way I hunt, when I go hunt with my dad on his property in East Texas, and we can get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, drink our coffee, sit in the truck, and then just walk out to a shooting house. Dude, it's beautiful, man. I love it. It's like, it feels so easy. And I remember a time when getting up at 4 o'clock was like, oh my God, not that long ago, this was in my adult life. And I'm like, man, why did I choose a spot where I have to walk 300 yards? Like, and everybody's probably felt that way at some point or the other. Like, could I just get my truck just a little bit closer? It just feels like that's a long ways to walk. And now here I am, paddling 2 miles in the dark by myself with nobody else around. And like everything else becomes easier. Honestly, everything else, here's the thing. Everything about your whole life feels easier whenever you do that. Right. Like all of a sudden, some of the chores that you do around the house or whatever are not nearly as hard, because literally the thing you do for fun is so hard. um it's fun though, man. I mean, I say it's hard. You get to a point where you're just like, this is the norm, this is how I do it, and you just get used to it.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about like some tactics in early season, and until I started like doing the podcast and kind of talking to a lot of different people and kind of actually kind of paying attention, deer season was, I don't know, I guess just around me. So when my deer season started, and so, Parker's one of these guys that I've noticed, like, it's like as soon as deer season starts anywhere, he's hunting deer. So it's not like, oh, well, the season in Alabama doesn't start until X day and it ends on this day. It's like, nope, Kentucky, Tennessee, Nebraska, North Dakota, wherever there's a hunting season, the first chance that you get to get out, you're going to do that. Right. And
Yeah.
so when you're looking at these out of state hunts and for these early season type stuff, what are you looking for like terrain features? I mean, it sounds like you're going to look for some water access because that's going to get you away from guys. But then on that note, what else? I mean, you could paddle into a place that nobody's been, but maybe they've not been there because there's no deer there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to look for, especially early season, a lot of the hunts that I'm doing, the Tennessee velvet hunt that I did, the Kentucky trip that I did. Those kind of places are typically flatter land, but they have ag. And so when you're looking at the end of August and early September, the best thing that you can have around you at that point to be able to kind of concentrate deer is crops. It's something that I am not necessarily good at hunting. Honestly, I'm not used to it. I hunt big woods, mountains and stuff like that down here. That's my kind of my like home. That's how I love to hunt. But when I'm going on these early season trips, I'm trying to find something that has soybeans, um, corn, any type of agriculture, and like you said, water access is great. If I can find both of those things that can work together, where I can find, boat access with ag that is only accessible by water, really, or at least the easiest access is water. Man, those spots look great to me. And like I said, like I have not been ultra successful on these early season hunts because I haven't been doing a real long time. And it's not what I'm used to, right? Like a lot of people have ag, when you start looking at Midwest and even a lot of the northern states, um, the public land just has ag. Like that's just how it is. Um, we don't have that here. There's not a lot of places in Alabama that you're going to find that. There's a few public pieces that do have some type of crops, but for the most part, you just don't have it. And so I'm learning right now. Still, that's why I do a lot of these trips um, early season, and I try to do something early. I'm also a content creator, so the quicker you can get on deer, the quicker you can get a video up there, the faster that you'll start getting your content to start, people start seeing it a lot faster whenever there's not a whole lot of content being produced in that early season. You can really be on top of it with those. And so that's another reason why I do it too. Just a non-tactical, I guess, thing is just I want to be producing videos as early as I can. But yeah, like water access and ag, that's pretty much what I'm looking for, and I'm trying to find a place to hunt for these early season trips.
And what about we talked about this a little bit at ATA and a little bit before the podcast here, but what about expectations? So, where I feel like guys around here, because there's a ton of pressure in Michigan, they go to Ohio, Kansas, Missouri, because they're looking for bigger bucks or places that are managed a little bit better than Michigan to get an opportunity to shoot a big buck. But at least for me, many times I come home with an unpunched tag because it wasn't the right deer, or, I could shoot that back home, et cetera, et cetera. You have a kind of an interesting take on that. So, I mean, how do you view like your expectations as you travel out of state to hunt?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, man, like I am not, especially out of state. Um, my expectation, if I would be, I always think about it. I can't remember who I heard say this a long time ago, but I always think about it like this: like if I'd be happy with it on the last day, then I'm going to be more than happy with it on the first day. Um, and so, that doesn't mean that I'm going to shoot every spike and forky that I see on an out of state trip, but it does mean that, if I'm going to, like this year, going to Kentucky, just for an example, I had made up in my mind, like, I'm not going to shoot, you know, I'm not going to shoot a small deer. That's not why I'm going to have another trip scheduled for the rut in Kentucky. Why would I shoot a small buck when I already have vacation days to come back during the rut when the big deer are going to be on their feet? And so, you know, my expectation was, if I see a good one, I'm going to shoot it and I'll figure out what I'm going to do for that week during the rut. But if I don't see a good one, then whatever. I'm not that worried about it. Now, when I go on this trip during the rut and if I'm not seeing deer, like I'm going to adjust, like I'm really going to adjust what I'm doing. And I may very well be happy with, an 80-inch deer or something like that. I'm not, I like to go out. I like the experience, right? Especially if I'm kayaking, there's just something about it. Like there's something about the whole, like putting a deer on a kayak that just makes it far more fun. It's just more fun to me. Um, I like to a lot of people, the shot, right? The shot is, and the first time you put your hands on those antlers, it's just like, oh man, this is awesome. That's not it for me. Like that's cool. I still enjoy that. I still enjoy walking up to the deer and like that moment. But to me, the moment really happens when I get that deer loaded up on the boat and I'm paddling out or whatever. Like it's just, and it maybe not for everybody. Everybody may not feel the same way as I do, but for me, that's magical. And like, it doesn't matter if it's a doe, if it's a 5 point, if it's a giant buck, like it's all fun. It's awesome. I am not going to go to a state if I can help it. I'm not going to go to a state um, and eat my tag. I'm just not going to do it. Like I don't make enough money to just throw $360 at the state of Kentucky and go home empty handed. I'm like, that's just not me. I'm not going to do it. And some people are going to be like, well, you ain't going to never kill 200 inchers if you're just shooting the 130s or whatever. Like, okay, that's fine. I don't care. Like, I want to go and enjoy myself. And I know that if it doesn't matter a 100-inch deer in any state in the United States of the world, in the United States of America, I'd be thrilled. Like, I just like it, it's fun. And if I have a memory, if I have something, that I can do a European mount and put on the wall and be able to look at that and remember, that trip, that's awesome to me. Like, I'm just not picky. I like the experience more than I even care. I like the experience 10 times more than I enjoy the antlers. Like, they're cool. Don't get me wrong. I like shooting big bucks, and I hunt big bucks. Like, that's the way I'm hunting. But I don't know, man. I don't care what somebody else thinks. If it's something I know I'm going to be happy with, I'm just going to be happy with it. And the other thing is too, going back to being a content creator, I would way rather have a video of me killing a deer than have a video of me being pretentious and not shooting a deer because I wanted to shoot something bigger, and that's not for everybody. If your goal, Adam, is to go out and shoot a 170, then don't shoot anything less than a 170. Like, that's your goal. My goal is to go out and more than anything, I want to get a buck on the kayak, and I have goals within that. Like this year in Alabama, actually last year, and I'll kind of go into this too. Another thing is most people kind of, if you talk to a lot of people, they're going to tell you the same thing is they have screwed up every opportunity that they've had at a big deer. They've missed, which I've missed. I missed 2 weeks ago in Kentucky on a giant. They've missed. They've made stupid decisions, whatever. Part of the reason why when I first started filming, I would shoot just about anything. Like, I was kind of a brown it's down guy for the first little bit, is because I wanted to get used to this thing. Like, I wanted to learn how to film and shoot and be successful on film, right? Like, that was my main goal, is like, I'm going to get stuff on film. I'm going to be a killer before I'm a big buck hunter, I'm going to be a killer and get those shots on film and learn how to do that. And the only way that you're going to learn how to do it is by doing it. And that is 100% true. Anybody who tells you anything different is lying. They don't know what they're talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about half the time, but this is one thing for me that I really do believe is true, is that you have to learn to be a killer if you want to be able to capitalize in those big moments on the big deer. And I say that all the while knowing in the back of my head I'm being haunted by the buck I missed in Kentucky last week. But I mean, it's just so true. And so when I first started filming, a lot of my videos were of smaller bucks, little does and things like that. And so you kind of make that reputation, you make that name for yourself, of like, oh, that guy kills whatever. And I'm really not that way. I'm like, especially in my home state, like, I want to kill big deer. Like, I know I could tag out on bucks in Alabama if I wanted to, on small bucks in a couple weeks. But, I really have challenged myself more here to focus on becoming better at killing mature deer. But I turn into a different guy when I go out on an out-of-state trip. I really do. And it's okay. Like, people can do that. It's all about your goals and the experience that you want to have, right? That is what the most important thing is. And only the hunter can decide what that experience is going to be. And that's pretty much it. Like, I can tell you what my experience expectations are, but I can't tell you what yours are.
Yeah. I mean, the way that, my father-in-law, Frank, he explained it to me. He said, you just got to get a couple under your belt, and then once you've killed them. And last year I killed my first deer on camera, and I told myself, like, I'm not going to shoot a little buck, like, right out the gate. And then I got the camera. There's a little buck there, 20 yards broadside. And it's like, I've been telling everybody, we got to start filming some of these, we got to get used to it. And I was like, all right, well, why did I carry all this stuff out here then? Like I said, I'm not that good of a hunter to be like picking and choosing like what I'm doing. Like, it's funny because I told Andrew Blair, we were talking about goals for the season or whatever, and I'm like, I want to kill an 85-inch 8-point. And he's like, what? I said, I've never killed an 8-point, and I want one for like a nice, like you said, just like a European mount, just like that, one that I don't feel bad for European mounting, one that's not on the border of like, oh, should I, shouldn't I? And then, for where I hunt in Michigan, anything over, Michigan commemorative bucks is over 100 inches. So, our book is 100 inches. So that's, it's a respectable buck around here. And that, I just want to shoot one, just a European mounted. That's all I want to do.
Yeah. I got a bunch of 90 and 100-inch bucks on the wall. Just like if a deer goes over 100 inches, you're probably not going to see me pass him. Not at this point in my life. Like, I've shot a lot of deer. I've shot a lot of bucks. I've shot several, decent sized bucks. But man, if I see a 100-inch deer, especially in Alabama, like, I'm gonna have a hard time not shooting him. And that's just maybe it's a flaw, honestly. Like, I'm okay if people are like, well, that's kind of stupid. Maybe it's something I should work on, but for right now where I'm at, I know I'm going to be very happy with a 100-inch deer, like it's just how I am.
And that's our audience too. There are guys that, travel out of state and, do a lot of stuff, but for here in Michigan, and, we got a lot of listeners in East Coast, PA, stuff like that. And, PA is actually coming back. They're doing a real good job with their conservation and their tags and their management and things. They've implemented, APRs that kind of make sense, or they're worlds better than what we have here in Michigan. But, it's good to have that, just enjoy hunting and be happy with the success versus, well, it needed another couple of years or this or that. And especially as you're, for a lot of guys transitioning from private to public, I guess I didn't realize that it was like a whole new world, because I've hunted public most of my life. We've got property, but it's so far away that it's not really something where you just skip out every weekend. So, if you want to hunt, you're going to go find a spot and you're going to battle it out. And, what is your style of hunting outside of like equipment or, the kayak hunting? I've always said that I'm a terrible, I'm a rut hunter. Like that's where I capitalize. I feel like that's one of the things where I can kind of figure out, okay. And I feel like not that it's a no-brainer, because there's some guys like Greg Litzinger that says he's a terrible rut hunter. But for me, like, I have a problem getting close. So I see deer, I know that there's deer, and I'm just off of them and they're over here, and then I see bucks, but they're just cruising over here. And so in the rut, all I have to do is figure out where those two places intersect, and I'm going to get an opportunity, and that's really worked out well for me. But do you have like certain terrain features or anything that you're kind of seeking out? Is it food? Is it destination location like John Eberhard? Or, what is it that you're targeting, as you're trying to hunt these bigger bucks?
Yeah, it changes a little bit throughout the season. The good thing about the big woods is that you don't have a lot of changes other than like acorns. Like that's pretty much it. Like that's a main food source. You don't have a lot of changes that happen throughout the season other than that. And pretty much by the time our season opens here in Alabama, acorns are already dropped. Like they're already coming down, and you can find those feed trees. There's some persimmons, some muscadines, like stuff like that. But for the most part, acorns is going to be like the way that guys hunt early season in the Midwest on soybeans. Deer hunters, in Alabama, like you're pretty much, that's what you've got to work with is the acorn crop. And so obviously that plays a pretty decent sized role in what I'm looking for, especially in the evenings. Now in the mornings and really throughout the whole season, the main thing that I'm looking for is hard transitions. So I don't know if that's necessarily a style of hunting. I don't know if you'd call that like pinch point or funnel type hunting. Sorry about that. I don't know if you heard that. My computer gave me an alert. I don't know what kind of style you would necessarily call it. But I'm trying to find those like hard transition lines and as many of them as I can, and be right in the middle of where they come together, where they meet. So um, I was talking to somebody on a podcast the other day, and I recommended the podcast that I did with Matt Powell from Tennessee. It was during deer season last year sometime that we did it. But the episode with him is called X Marks the Spot. And basically, if you're watching the video, you can kind of see this. Imagine that this top portion right here is one type of vegetation, right? This portion over here is another type of vegetation. This portion over here is another type, and this portion right here is another type. You have all three of those, and you want to be right there where they all come together, because more than likely what you're going to find on those hard transitions is heavy trails on all of the lines, right? And you want to be right there in the middle where you can find where they all kind of come together. So where I live in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, and so it's not mountainous, but it's definitely steep, and it's got, you know, a lot of ups and downs, lots of ridges and things like that. We have a lot of pines, we have a lot of clear cuts, and we have a lot of hardwoods. And so what I'm normally looking for on my map is a spot that might have pines on one side, it might have a clear cut that meets up to it, and then hardwoods next to it somewhere. And I'm going to get right there in the middle where all those things come together, where they all meet. And the best scenario that I can find is that with some type of terrain feature coming out of it. And people think like, man, that's super specific. Yes, it is very specific. Like, but it really narrows down the areas that you're going in and looking for. When you're biting off, Zach Farrenball talked about it in one of the videos recently, where I think it was while he was in North Dakota, maybe. But he's talking about like finding those places with running water. It narrows down. You can take a big giant chunk of public, and you can condense it down to what you're going to focus on. That doesn't mean that there's not deer everywhere else, but this is just your focus. And the thing that I've noticed is um, that it pretty well works most of the time. Like if I can, it doesn't mean I'm going to shoot a buck or see a deer on that hunt, but I am going to find sign almost all the time when I can find those multiple habitat and vegetation types meeting together. I'm almost always going to find it. And if I can find like a small drainage coming out of it or something, that's a lot of time like you have your exits on the interstate, right? If you can find those small drainages, you can find those. That's like kind of an exit out of there. And like I said, it doesn't mean I'm going to shoot a deer there. Doesn't mean I'm going to even see one at the time, but I'm going to keep coming back to it more than likely because there's probably going to be deer sign in there. And the reason is here's kind of the way that works out is they are all those different things offer something to the whitetail. So a thick pine thicket like we have down here, you're going to find that a lot of deer bed down in that stuff. A clear cut is going to offer a food source. It's basically like a big gigantic bedding cover area with food right in the middle of it, so they can kind of have whatever they want in that clear cut. And then hardwoods is going to offer more than anything. It's going to offer food, especially in the early season because you've got acorns. Even in the late season and in the rut, they're going to be feeding on those red oak acorns once the white oaks go out. And so each of those things offers something different to the deer, and they're going to go back and forth between those things, and they're not going to have to go nearly as far to get to what they are looking for. Does that make sense? Kind of. And that's pretty much what I've kind of developed as my own style.
Yeah, I mean, like in my head right now, I mean, I'm just thinking about there's like a couple of different areas that I know of where there's been in the last few years like some clear cuts in some hardwoods, and there's pines and stuff. So I'm trying to I'm thinking, okay, all right, well maybe I need to walk that edge back in that corner, where I've not been before, but I mean it all makes sense, and that's one of the things I've talked to a few different guys about hunting over clear cuts and this side of the wind, that side of the wind, etc. But never it's it's always one of those kind of like anomalies where, if you get a clear cut that's 3 years old, it's the thickest, nasty, and there's deer in there. I mean, those deer can just run in there and hide out for the entire season if they want to. And trying to figure out when they're coming out, how you're gonna hunt them. So that makes total sense. So I'm in my mind, I'm thinking about that, and then I've got another property that's got all these weird different changes with ag and stuff like that. So I'm thinking in my head, okay, well, that makes sense. Those would be some places to check out. For the listeners, like, I'm learning just as much as you guys are. I mean, maybe the listeners have got it all figured out and they just like it for the mindless banter that we have on here. But like I said, when I bring people on here, I want to try to learn just as much for myself as for for the listener. And that's kind of why I try to ask the questions in the way that I do. One of the things, like I said, for me being a rut hunter, like I think Parker's had I don't know, probably one of the most powerful series of podcasts that I've ever listened to. Here on his local legend series with Mr. Bobby Worthington, and I can't recommend those to guys enough. In the same way that I'm listening to you and trying to figure these things out, what was it like? And can you kind of explain that series a little bit? Because I think that one's probably got you a little bit more questions and comments and everything than maybe anyone that you've had to this point.
Yeah, it definitely did. Bobby is awesome. First off, super nice guy. Very, very knowledgeable dude. And he's got the track record to prove it. Like he's got a wall full of gigantic bucks that he's not just going to tell you, that he's the best in the world or anything like that, but he is going to tell you like, hey, I know what I'm talking about, and here's why. And the thing that Bobby does very well is he takes a lot of the things that we've all heard before, probably, but he puts it in a way that's just like so graceful and easy to understand. He's just great. And basically in those podcasts, he did one of his seminars. Like we didn't ask any questions, or just go, like just do a seminar for us, as if you have no interruptions, and we'd ask a few questions at the end. And but we really wanted to take the time to just really absorb his knowledge and not like push our agenda or anything on him, just let him do whatever he wanted to do. And it ended up being a 3-part series that was just killer. People loved it. So the basis of what he says is don't hunt them outside of the rut. If you want to kill a big buck, don't do it outside of the rut. He talked about stand placement, which is for the most part what he talked about was hunting funnels and pinch points. And then he talked about persistence, and that is basically how often you are hunting those spots. He just breaks it down in such a good way. But the thing that really got people fired up and kind of pissed some people off was that first part of don't hunt you're not going to kill your best chance to kill a mature buck is during the rut, basically. Don't waste your time trying to kill him somewhere else because you're just going to blow him out. Maybe you'll kill him, but if you'll wait until he's the dumbest and he's on his feet the most, then you have the best opportunity. That's all he's saying. And people, the question I got the most was usually a sarcastic, like, well, it looks like I'm not going to hunt till the rut, or I guess I can't hunt early season anymore if I want to kill bucks like Bobby Worthington. And the thing that people have to understand is Bobby is telling us how to kill the like world-class deer. Like he's in Tennessee. He's not hunting. He is hunting some Midwestern states, but he is this successful in Eastern Tennessee where you just don't see a lot of gigantic bucks come out of.
And he was talking like 190s.
Yeah, like we're not talking like 130s and stuff. Like when I say like I can kill, I kill a big buck in the early season, I'm talking about a 130 or something like that. I'm not 190 never even really enters my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but what Bobby's telling us is how to go out and target these like the world class deer, which is where his experience is at. And so that was the question that I probably got the most of, like, okay, well, I've shot big bucks in October before. It's like, okay, like that's great. That's fine. That's the best part about hunting is there's different ways to do it. You know, what Bobby has developed for himself is a rut hunting strategy. What you may develop for yourself is, I think about Joe Rentmeester from Hunting Beast. That dude gets right in the freaking bedroom and shoots them in their bed. Like maybe that's what you do, and he's going to be like, no, I don't have to hunt the rut. If we were to ask him the same questions that Bobby was talking about, they would have two completely different answers, and because they have two completely different styles. That's okay. Like it's the beauty of what we do is there are multiple. What is it? There's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to kill a buck. Like, but I think the thing that people have to understand when listening to this is that listening to that podcast is that Bobby is a level that a lot of hunters don't exist on. Like you just, especially when it comes to public, he's hunting public land for the most part, um, and he just knows what he's doing, man. Like I, when I first heard him talking, some of my thoughts that I had were like, no, that doesn't make any sense. That's not right. But the more you think about it, the more you're like, well, I mean, he's kind of more successful than I am, so maybe I should listen. Maybe he's got something to say. Um, and it ended up being, man, everybody loved it. Everybody loved that podcast series.
Yeah, like I said, I just wanted to bring that up because I've recommended that podcast series probably to more people than any other podcast.
I appreciate it, man.
Just simply because, like, listening to it, and there was a lot of there was a lot of buzz around it. So I'm like, well, I need to check this out. And it's like, my goodness. And then one thing, like, uh, Parker is great. However, Bobby Worthington, I think you said it, he sounds like a preacher that's been doing it forever and ever and ever. I mean, you could just, he could read you like a bedtime story and you'd love it. It doesn't matter what the guy's voice and the drawl and the cadence in which he speaks. You're just like mesmerized, like hypnotized by the whole thing. And then he's talking about deer hunting, so.
It's true. It's like, man, if he was a preacher, everybody'd be getting saved. Like he's just it's like Pawpaw reading you a bedtime story. That's kind of the way that I would put it too. And he doesn't come across in a way that is arrogant. He's confident in what he's saying, but he doesn't come across as arrogant or pushy or anything like that. He's just confident. Like he's talking with absolutes because it has been absolutes for him, and it's years and years and years of experience hunting these big mature whitetails that you just can't, like, you would be doing yourself a disservice to completely shut him out and not listen to it because maybe your hunting style is a little bit different. And when you ask me about hunting style, Adam, I'm like, I don't want for me to have a hunting style. Like I want for my hunting style to be that I use the kayak to do it, but I want to learn, I want to learn how to hunt the way that Dan Infault preaches about, hunting specific buck beds. If that ever becomes something that I have to do in a scenario, I want to learn how to hunt, ag country. If that is something that I have to do in a scenario, I want to learn how to hunt, bedding areas like John Eberhart talks about a lot. And I want to, when the rut comes around, I want to hunt like Bobby Worthington does, like I want to learn how to do all this stuff. I don't want to just do one thing, and so that's why it's hard to answer the question about hunting styles. It's like, I want to do all of it.
Well, the question is kind of like based on, so you probably get this a lot. Maybe not. Maybe you're better at asking questions than I am. But when I ask people questions about certain things, hunting styles, whatever, like kind of the answer that you just gave is correct. You want to be well-rounded. And so the answer is always, well, it's situational. or you got to hunt the hot sign when the hot sign's hot. Well, how do you know that? Or what's your recommendation if you were to say one piece of equipment, yada, yada, yada? It's always boots, right? So it's hard for the listener to get,
it's always boots.
it's hard for the listener to, it can be overwhelming, right? So
Yeah, sure.
as you're looking at this, you say, well, man, I need to hunt like Dan Infalt, and I need to hunt like John Eberhart, and I need to learn this. But, maybe I'm not familiar with public land, and I don't know how far I need to go in, and I don't know what terrain features I'm looking for. Should I be looking for beds? Should I be looking for scrapes? Should I be looking for rubs? How much is this more important? So I just kind of like to get an idea for that guy that does feel overwhelmed, of one like starting point. You say, okay, well, I hunt a lot of hill country, so I look for these draws. If I can find a draw, that's maybe on that top 1/3 with a little bit of a saddle up above it, then I know that I'm going to be in a pretty good pinch point. So if you can look on a map when you're going in and start there, and so that the X marks the spot thing is pretty good. But like I said, for guys that aren't killers yet, that they're trying to do that, it can be extremely overwhelming because, forget about, like take equipment, kayaks, saddles, heavy arrows, all of this,
all the things.
make your head explode, right?
Yeah, they do.
So that's why I'm just trying to figure out like the one tip or whatever that you would have for the new guy going on public land to maybe increase their odds of killing.
So the thing, this way I say it, and I feel like I'm regurgitating because I say it a lot, but I call them the common denominators, right? And in math, you use that term of the common themes that you find, right? So you find a deer. Let's say you're driving down the highway and you see a deer in the same spot every single time you drive by there. Deer's in the same spot. Pull up your maps and look at it, and you can more than likely find the reason why that deer's in the same spot. Assuming you're not looking at them in a big bean field or something like that, you can find some reason why they're there. In the same way, if you go to the woods and you see deer sign always in the same areas, like let's say you're walking a creek bottom and the creek crossing, you find a creek crossing and you mark it on your map, and then you find another one 2 miles away and another creek crossing and you mark it on your map. More than likely, those things, you'll find something that is a common denominator within both of those things somewhere around it. And the thing for me that I have always found to be the case is hard transitions. Those edges are always just the common denominators everywhere. Any amount of large sign that I find, more than likely within 100 yards, you're going to find some type of vegetation change, a hard vegetation change. And that's always been the common denominator for me. And so it may be different in your area, depending on where you hunt. Your common denominator might be something else. But that's just kind of been for me. And then everything else kind of works around that, right? So bedding, food sources, saddles, like finding a saddle or a pinch point or a funnel or whatever, like everything can kind of work around that, what that common denominator is for me. And I can find those areas where I'm like, okay, I think the bucks are going to be better right here on this spur, on this point. Here's the transition line. If I'm a big buck and I'm going to want to go to my food source, I'm going to follow this transition line to get right here, and I'm going to set up right there in between it. So that sounds probably oversimplified it, but that's kind of my thought process.
Well, like I said, the simplification is great because there's so much information, and it's like, I talk to guys on a regular basis that give me like 5 different snippets of 10 different hunting styles, and they're like, but what about, what about? And at some point, in a lot of times we talk about the hunter numbers going down and all of this stuff, it gets overwhelming. And if you try to figure out all these, million different hunting styles, and you go out there and then you still don't see anything, that's not doing anything for hunter recruitment or,
Right.
hunter retention. They're going to say, well, I've been traipsing all over this big tract of land and I can't seem to see a deer. I haven't killed anything. Like,
Yeah.
give me my guided hunt on high fence or something, and I'll put a big one on the wall, and whatever.
The common denominator in Texas when I was driving down the highway, the common denominator when I would see a big deer is there's always a big gigantic 8-foot fence around somewhere close. So that's a real thing out there, man. Like you can drive parts of the hill country and you won't see a normal fence for miles and miles and miles and miles. There's so much high fence out there. And that just kind of goes back to like the way I was brought up. Not the way I was brought up. We never like hunted high fence ranches or anything like that. Like we couldn't afford it. We weren't in that tax bracket, but like it's just such a different hunting style in Texas, man. Like it's just crazy. It's sometimes I'm like, there was a time in my life when I was like, man, I'm going to retire. And when I retire, I'm moving to Texas Hill Country and I'm buying a high fence ranch. I'm going to shoot whatever I want to. And I'm going to get people to pay to come out here and hunt. And that's how I'm going to make my money. And now I'm like, I don't really know. That doesn't really sound all that great. Crazy.
You touched on it at the beginning, but it's kind of funny that you say that. So how do you feel about successes on public versus on the leases? And do some of the deer mean more now? Or I had a long conversation when I was out in Colorado elk hunting about the question was the right way. So if it's ethical and you followed all of the rules, all playing fields, every harvest should be equal, right? Because
Yeah, and they are, honestly, for me. Like, for me personally, I'm more proud of just sitting here looking at some European mount. There's my first decent 8-point, like a 90, 85, 90-inch 8-point that I killed on public. That was my first decent public lane buck. And then right next to it, I've got like a 120-inch buck that I killed on a hunting club in Georgia. And I'm definitely more proud of that 8-point. But it wouldn't have taken much for that. Like if we go out and me and my daughter, who's 3, if she kills her first deer on let's just go extreme. If my daughter killed her first deer on a high fenced ranch, that deer would be more special to me than any of the public bucks that I've shot. Right. So like I say, it always comes back to the experience that you want to have. I personally don't really want to go out on a high fence ranch and shoot a deer, but somebody else might, and that's fine with me. Like, I don't care. First off, they probably worked hard to get the money that it took to go and hunt that high fence ranch, where I might just like have this chip on my shoulder of like, oh, I worked hard, I kayak at 2:00 in the morning, blah, blah, blah. Well, they spent a lifetime working to afford to go on a high fence ranch hunt. So there's somewhere along the way, there is work that has gone into a big product like that, right? So it just depends on the experience that you want to have. One of the smartest land managers that I know personally, he owns like 10,000 acres out here. He is loaded. He's got tons of money. You go out there and he's got like Hilton on stilts shooting houses over food plots and stuff. But that man has worked so hard to get that property the way that it is. Like, you can go out there and you're going to shoot a big buck, but he has worked hard. He's got a ton of sweat equity into, number one, being wealthy enough to afford that. And then number two, he's retired and all he does is work on habitat out there. Like, there's sweat that went into that. And so I try not to discount anything for anybody. If you told me, Adam, that buck that's sitting there behind you, that you shot it on a high fence ranch with a crossbow over a corn pile, and you were jacked about it, I'd be like, hey man, I'm jacked for you. That's awesome. It's legal. It is You got the meat, you had the experience that you wanted to have. I don't care. Like I'm going to be happy for anybody, no matter what. That's always how I look at it. For me personally, like for my deer kills, I mean, I'm going to obviously get more out of a public land deer than I am out of a private land deer. But I say that, but there's like little variables. If I was on private land and I shot a buck with my little girl there with me and we got to experience that moment together, that might outweigh a public land deer for me too. Like, it's just the experience that you want to have, man. That's what it always comes down to for me.
Yeah, I mean, these are the two biggest bucks that I've ever killed. Both came off public, and uh, two. I've got two little 6 points that I think mean just as much or more. One of them I shot on our property in the UP. So I've got two brothers. One was in South Dakota. He killed a slammer mule deer. My brother, who doesn't hunt at all, very minimally anyways, shot a doe that same morning, and I missed a really nice buck. Now, mind you, even with rifles throughout our whole lives, we've never killed deer on the same day. And I went and messed up my opportunity to kill a deer. So that night I went out and this little 6 point came by and I drilled him. He went 35 yards, fell over. But, I got to share that experience with my brothers. We all killed deer on the same day. It's kind of like one of those things that, will be very difficult to replicate.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of those memories that's, burned in my head, that the antlers or whatever are just a bonus, I mean, I only saw two deer. I shot at both of them and I got one. So I mean,
yeah. I tell you, one of the most special deer that I've ever killed is also one of the smallest deer that I ever killed. And there two of the most special deer that I've ever killed were two of the smallest deer that I ever killed, and I killed them both within a week of each other. And it was my first year doing public land stuff, and I killed both of these deer. And one of them I killed when my dad came from Texas, and we do a rutcation every year, and that was the first annual rutcation. Kayaks, we camped out on a little island, and our first morning I killed this buck, and it's just a little bitty tiny 6 point. It's nothing special, and I was so jacked about it. The reason why it's so special though is because, number one, my dad was there with me and we had a heck of a time. I actually ended up killing that first good 8 point while he was there as well, for that, like 2 days later. But he also that same trip he fell in the water. So before we got to my deer, so I had shot the deer and gave it the rest of the morning for him to hunt, and then I got down and paddled over to where he was at, and he got in his kayak and I got in mine, and well, actually I didn't get in mine. He was like centered on a log on his boat, and so I just kind of gave him like a little nudge, and when I did that, it like slid him and he fell in like straight into the lake. His gun went in the bottom of the lake. Like, it was just a bad deal. And it was cold, man. It was freaking cold. It was December. And so he's there with wet clothes in his undies trying to fish his gun out of the bottom of the lake, and we still had to get this deer out of the woods too. And this was the first day of like a 4-day hunt, and all his clothes are now wet and it's cold. And that memory, man, it just like I'll be hard pressed to ever have a memory that's that memorable, that's that good. It wasn't great honestly in the moment, but I started taking some pictures and stuff, and he was mad at me for taking pictures. I was like, Dad, we're gonna want these one day. We're gonna want to remember this one day. And it was that's one of the smaller deer that I've ever shot, but that memory surrounding it was just insane. It was so much fun.
Well, and when everything goes right and it's just easy, it takes all the fun out of it. And, it is all about that perspective, right? You were talking about, the 2-mile paddle, the 4.5-hour journey to get just in the stand, and it makes everything else seem that much easier. I think though that adversity makes everything that much sweeter, because you're you don't remember the good times, for the most
Definitely.
part. You remember the things where you had to work for it, or there was something that makes it more difficult.
Definitely.
And that's one thing that I love about hunting, and that's why bow hunting to me is, you know, so much fun, or like the ultimate, because you're always getting kicked in the nuts, like all the time. It's always,
Always.
and I think you said it on that video from the Kentucky deer, like,
Yeah.
there's nothing more heartbreaking than bow hunting, or something. I
Yeah.
remember the quote.
There's nothing more heartbreaking than hot women and bow hunting, right? Like you remember that first time in high school when the hottest girl turned you down or whatever, and like it's just so heartbreaking. But for some reason, we still like the hot girl. Like we still like bow hunting. Bow hunting lets you down more times than it makes you happy, but we still like it. It's worth it. This is gonna sound kind of crude, but the first time you score on a big buck is like I did it. Well, I'm not gonna go back in with the hot girl, but like you know what I'm saying though. It's like it the good outweighs the bad big time. I would if I went off my bad experiences bow hunting, I would quit. Like there's no reason to do it. But I don't. I remember the good times, and I'm willing to just like grind past all of the bad times just to try to get that fix again. It's like cocaine.
And it,
It's like drugs.
and then and going into that, we always ask, so what is your bow setup? So what are you shooting with for bow, sight, arrows, everything?
Yeah, you gave me a hard time on that podcast with Ted Bright, so we won't talk about the heavy arrows. Um, but I definitely listen to that. I'm shooting a New Breed GX2. I've shot it for 3 years, and um, yeah, I just, it's a good bow. It was a better bow. I felt like it was better bow, especially with my lighter arrow setup. I felt a little more confident with it. Now that I've gone with the heavier setup, I'm short, so I have a short draw length. The bow is not very fast, um, and so going with a heavier arrow, and I'm not even that heavy. Like my arrows aren't that heavy; they're like 500 grains. They're not. It's not like I'm shooting, an axe at them or anything. Um, but I mean, my speed has gone down to like 220. With a 500 grain arrow, which is like if I wanted to go heavier, good luck. I'm shooting a recurve speed at that point.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of that is the bow that I'm shooting. Uh, I definitely like, so a guy named Kyle Knoll designed the bow. He used to be at New Breed, and he's not there anymore, unfortunately. And but Kyle was great, man. He could work on that thing, and he could build a bow with anybody. But he's not there anymore, and so it kind of makes it kind of difficult to shoot that bow when the guy that could work on it better than anybody doesn't work there anymore. Um, and so I'm shooting that. I've got the Trophy Ridge React 5 sight. I was using the EZV. I got it, but because my arrows were just my whole setup was shooting so slow, my gaps were just like this big. Like
Mhm.
I could not. In my opinion, there was a lot of room for error with the EZV for that. Now, if I was still shooting a 350 grain arrow, I would be using the EZV all day because my pin gaps would be so much smaller. Just the margin for error is smaller um, with lighter arrows for me, for my build and my specs, I guess. I'm trying to think. What else did you ask? Arrows. I'm
Yep.
using the Victory RIP TKO arrows with VPA 2 blade, 175 grain double bevel broadhead, and 70 grain ethics insert zinger fletchings. I think that's it. Just a regular knock that comes on them.
Okay.
I should use a lighted knock, but I don't.
So a couple things there. I saw you. I just ordered one of those Ranch Fairy deals for sharpening the broadheads. I saw you put a post up. How did that work? Is it just as
It's
easy as?
awesome. It's awesome, man. I sat here with this freaking. I got to move my daughter's teacups off my desk and show you this because she was using it as a tray. But I bought this little like this whole set to like try to sharpen these broadheads, and dude, it was a pain in my butt trying to keep that bevel angle right.
Mhm.
And so I watched a video somewhere, and I can't remember which one it was. It wasn't. I have since watched the Ranch Fairy one that
Mhm.
he did with THP with Stay Sharp. I can't remember where I watched it or heard about it, but I was like, man, that's perfect for what I need. So I got that thing. I got the wet dry sandpaper that they do, and dude, it's like freaking sharp. Like it does great. It takes a little while because you got to go through the different grit sandpapers multiple times. But my gosh, once you're done with it, it is like a sword. It's like shiny. It's crazy how good that works.
Yeah, and
Um,
I can see like I've got double bevel broadheads and I've got to sharpen them up as well. And watching that process and then having to flip it and then flip it and then flip it, I see why single bevel you'd be like be half the time like on each one.
and I wanted to use the cutthroats, but man, they took so long. I ordered them in like June, and I wasn't going to get them in time for my Kentucky trip, and so I was just like, I mean, I spent like $60 for three of them, or $65 for three of them. I'm just gonna get my money back and get more VPAs. Like,
Yeah, they and the price went up because earlier in the summer they were like $49 or $55 or something like that. And then
yeah,
I went to order them when everything was sold out. They were like $70 for three of them, and I was like, man, it's going to be a lot for six broadheads. So
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I had ordered them. I'd already paid for them. I think I had ordered two packages of them, but I was like, man, I mean, I need these things before my deer season starts, you know. And it wasn't like there's a lot of people on Saddle Hunter right now just griping and complaining, being stupid because they're not going to get their saddle until after season starts, but they ordered it, you know, like yesterday,
yeah,
and
and
they wanted it.
everybody wants everything to be Amazon. They want. I mean,
Yeah,
that's one thing that Amazon's done. I mean, they do it really well, but I mean, they want it to 2-day shipping. They want it
yeah,
right now, and it's like one of the things most of these companies. I mean, if they're I don't know. There isn't a real big saddle hunting company. I don't think that's like a conglomerate or whatever. But these guys
hawk,
they're all hunting. Yeah,
hawk now.
yeah. But I mean, look what happens with their sticks. I mean,
Yeah,
you order those in the season. They manufacture what they're projected for the season, and when they run out, they run out.
yeah,
So you can't even buy I mean, there's been a lot of problems with them, but you can't buy the 2-step ones right now. Those are sold out
yeah,
everywhere, and the 3-steps are hit or miss. So it's like, in Hawk had said that they were going to come out with a platform and all of that. I've seen the saddle out, but I've not seen their platform. Have you?
oh yeah.
For sale? I mean, and
Oh,
available?
I don't know if it's for sale. I don't know if it's available. I
Yeah,
saw the picture of it though. It's
yeah,
just the tethered copy one.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was pretty rough.
But
Um,
but that's the thing. These little, you know, cutthroat. The Magnus. I mean, Magnus is a pretty big company, but it's still a small company. So
mhm.
these guys are doing everything that they can to get everything out, and they're still trying to hunt and be outdoorsmen and do all the things that you know
Yeah.
that we like to do, and then we're berating them because we waited until the last minute to put in an order. I mean,
Yeah, and my deal was like my deal with that thing was like I didn't wait until last minute. I mean, I ordered them like in June.
mhm.
Like it wasn't like I was just like I need them now, you know. I was like 3 months, you know. And so and they sold out and they were doing the best they can. It doesn't have anything to do with that. I was just like, you know,
Yeah,
I'm
you
just
need
gonna
broadhead.
continue using the VPAs. The VPAs are great, and it's a broadhead. You know, like I don't think that single bevel is gonna do just that much different. You know,
Mm.
it'll do some different, but it's not gonna be that much different. And so I've got now. I mean, I've bought lots of packets of these 175 grain. Here's the package for them. It doesn't really have a picture of them in there, but you can kind of see the shape of them and stuff.
Yep. Yeah.
And they're great, man. I haven't shot a deer with them. I shot at one, but they will kill a branch for sure.
Now, what are you looking at other bows? I mean, you got your eye on something else?
I mean, I can't really afford another bow, so I'm just kind of like, I tried to sell the new breed, honestly, and I feel like I'm borderline talking bad. I'm not trying to talk bad about the company. It's just we used to work with New Breed when Kyle was there with Southern Ground, and used to work with them and loved it. I mean, Kyle was just the best, dude. Just absolutely just a killer guy, and great with a bow. But when he stepped out of it, it was kind of like, okay, well, I'm still going to use the bow, but we don't really work with New Breed anymore. And so at this point, I'm just kind of like, man, that new VXR came out and I shot it. I was like, holy cow, this thing is sweet. So every time I've ever shot a Matthews, it's been just an incredible experience. I love shooting Matthews. The last one I owned was the Monster 7, I think. So it's been a while. And then I had a Hoyt Spider 30 before that, and that was a great bow too. And then I've had this new breed for 3 years, and like I said, I've killed more deer with the new breed than I did with any other bow. But the technology that keeps coming out, man, is like, it's great. Like, it really is. Like, there's some good bows that are out there. I don't think any of them are, Indians killed them with a stick and a string for a long time. So
that's what I was going to say about the broadheads. I mean, when you said, it's just a broadhead, I'm like, well, it's, they killed them with stones.
yeah, I mean, I'm being picky at this point. Like, I'm shooting this new breed right now. Like, it's not like it was bad enough for me to just go out and buy a new bow. I'm just not going to do that. But it's it's like I said, like when I got it, it's super light. It's extremely light. It's got a small profile, so it's great in the kayak. And also, the other thing about it is when you're using the kayak like I do, like, I'm not going to go out and spend $4,000 on a new rifle. That's just going to get muddy and dirty and gross, and I'm going to drop it in the dirt, a lot. It's the same thing with a bow, man. Like, I just don't really want to spend, $2,000 on a bow setup when I know, like, I'm gonna abuse that thing like crazy. And they'll all kill deer. It's mostly personal preference more than anything.
Yeah, I just wondered, with the speed issue and kind of what you're going through, if you had your eyes on something yet.
I would like to get something else just for the speed issue. It has less to do with the bow, and more to do with the speed more than anything. Like, I don't think I like that I can, the high FOC, I think, has a greater advantage to it than speed does, especially at that 20 to 30 yard range. But I would like to have a better happy medium. I would like to shoot faster than 220. Yeah.
All right. Well, man, I know you got a meeting to get to, and I appreciate you taking the time this morning with us, and just kind of cutting up about public land and deer hunting and early season. Where can everybody follow along with everything what you're doing, and then where can they find the series with Bobby Worthington and the podcast about the X marks the spot?
Yeah, so if you go to YouTube, you can find the Southern Ground Hunting channel, and that'll have all the videos from pretty much the past 3 years. And I think I'm pretty well got everything uploaded on the new channel. So you can find that there. You can go to pretty much anywhere podcasts are at, and you can find I'm trying to look up the actual episode numbers for those, but go to I use Apple Podcast. Search Southern Ground Hunting or Sportsmans Nation Whitetail feed. You can find me on both of those. So we have two different feeds that are the same thing. And subscribe there. The Bobby Worthington series was during the local legends series that we did during the summer, and it started with episode 87, and it's 87, 88, and 89. That was the Bobby Worthington series. Then the X Marks the Spot was episode 63 in January of this year, and that's with Matt Powell, and that was a really good one. We had a couple really good ones right around there about that are really tactics based. Anything with Michael Perry is just top notch. He's a local guy here that is a big buck slayer, man. He's a murderer, and he knows how to do it. And you can find all that on the podcast network, and then on YouTube. I try to put some of the podcasts on YouTube like this, the conversations like this. But for the most part, it's like hunting videos and like a couple of product reviews and stuff like that. So you can find everything there on Facebook, Southern Ground Hunting, on Instagram, Southern Ground Hunting. Pretty much, if you type in Southern Ground Hunting, something should pull up.
And it's the Southern Ground Hunting because there's some overlap with the Southern podcast. And
yeah, there's several Southern brands that, and dude, if I could change my name, I would. I would change it in a heartbeat. But we're just gonna try to do it as best as we can, and I mean, there's a lot of brands that have Bowhunter at the beginning of it too. So, I mean,
oh yeah,
you just got to stick out, man. You got to do your best. You got to hustle and grind and make yourself noticeable.
Right. Well, like I said, I appreciate all the time, and I think that's kind of all we got for today.
Sweet, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. We'll have to catch up after the season, and I'll tell you about the one deer I killed and the few that I missed, and you can tell me about the dozen that you got in the freezer.
Maybe. I mean, at this rate, I've missed a lot. In the last 2 years, I've missed more deer than I've missed in the rest of my life combined. So,
well, you're getting opportunities.
Yeah, just appreciate those opportunities.
Hey,
grateful for them.
Awesome, Parker, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.